And of course, we'll be looking at the state of the nation in terms of what has been happening in this capital, especially for the last few days or so. You do know that what happened in Mradi area of Embakasi following that gas explosion, we're still keeping an eye on that, and we do understand the Wiper Party leader and an Azimio principal, that is Kalonzo Musyoka, will be visiting that particular area a day after the ODM leader Raila Odinga toured that particular area yesterday and called on for the compensation of those particular families. We do understand that over 250 people are still receiving treatment across various hospitals here in the capital, and also in terms of the compensation, the government clearly stated that those particular victims will be compensated in due time. And of course, you do know that the Embakasi Social Hall is one of the footholds that they are spending their nights there as they look for a permanent solution for their housing problem. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Welcome to the show once more. That is all we had for you, and this is what we'll be lining up for you in the next 2 hours. So my co-anchor this morning is none other than Susan Thuku, and joining me right now is Sammy Melly, a political analyst, and of course in just a few, Oscar Omondi, a political analyst, will be joining me. And finally, we'll be having Dr. Isaack Hassan, who is a governance and a political analyst as well, joining us, just looking at the state of the nation. But let me start with Sammy here, given that you're already here. Sammy, thank you for making time for us this morning. We want to start on that tragic note where we witnessed that gas explosion in Embakasi. The rescue operation is still ongoing. Unfortunately, we have lost 6 Kenyans. Over 250 people are in hospital. Let me get your take, because this is the first time you'll be having your say on this matter. Your thoughts initially when you saw that Thursday night incident?
Good morning. One I want to say is that it's a very unfortunate incident. It's quite unfortunate to the extent that we can have such facilities in a residential area. I think there are some departments of the government that perhaps slept on the job. Because if NEMA approved that structure to be there, that plant to be there, there are other Nairobi county government agencies that ensure that usually check. It's not that they check once; they usually do the rounds. That means somebody somewhere is responsible for that. Those deaths that we have gotten are serious Kenyans who have lost their lives. Some children have been orphaned. There's some women have been widowed, and men becomes widowers. Now that story is very unfortunate, because we need as a country to be serious on some issues. We have a well-designated industrial area. We have well-designated residential areas. We need buffer zones between them. In case of such an emergency, there should be also a quick response. We have seen these incidences happening before. You remember the Sinai tragedy that happened, and many Kenyans died. Yes, and I think we have not learned our lessons well. And the government agencies responsible should take charge, full charge, because I can't come start a plant or an industry where there is a resident. And such industries, there are so many that are operating currently that are in residential areas. There are so many that are operating even near schools. There are so many that are operating near crowded areas. Such facilities should be away from crowded areas, away from residential areas. And I think our government should stop being reactive, yes, rather than being responsive. They should plan well. Just like right now, you see a problem with drainage all over. In case of such a fire incident, the firefighting equipment cannot access some places in this country, especially the slum areas and residential areas. Illegal structures are coming up every other day. And at the end of the day, we start arresting people haphazardly, without even doing serious investigations. And I'm even doubting whether those cases will be fully prosecuted. Because you remember even the tragedy that happened in Nakuru when a dam burst. Were the people compensated? Is the company that is setting up such structures having insurance covers? Because such things should be thoroughly checked, thoroughly scrutinized, so that by the time you allow me, even though we said we should allow one-stop shop, whereby everything, if you want to start an industry, you get an easier clearance. We didn't say we should allow people to come up with the structures anywhere, anyhow. Because we have Kenyans. Just like you see serious countries like America, one life of an American is seriously taken. Ours, we have had accidents over the holiday. No one has talked about it. No one has taken actions. Such an accident happens. No one takes responsibility. We should have people even taking responsibility from the administrative section and say, I have resigned because of this and that and that. It cannot be business as usual.
Okay. Yes. And of course, this is a conversation that we are having. Join us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1, at Abdiaziz Hashim 1 as well. We're talking about the Embakasi gas explosion. That is where we start our conversation this morning. It is still an ongoing operation in Mradi area of Embakasi East. We do understand up to now we have lost, unfortunately, 6 Kenyans, and over 250 of them are still in hospital battling for their lives. And of course, in just a week's time, the government was asking for Kenyans to show up in various hospitals so that you can donate blood, so that it can help those victims who are currently receiving treatment in various establishments across the capital. And we do understand, though the owner as well as other suspects of the 4 suspended NEMA officials will be appearing this morning before the court to see if they can be detained for 21 more days as the investigation continues. That was the plea of the investigative officers yesterday at the corridors of justice. We do understand that our reporter, that is Ruth Wamboi, is currently on that particular bit. And of course, if we do get the live images, we'll be heading over there live if we can. But let me get to introduce my guest once more. We do have Oscar Omondi, a political analyst. Welcome to the show, Oscar. Thank you. And also the person who was speaking initially earlier was Sammy Melly, a political analyst as well. Welcome, Sammy.
Thank you.
And then finally, renowned figure here is Dr. Isaack Hassan, a governance as well as a political analyst. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you.
Now let me head over to Oscar. Oscar, this is the first time you'll be having your say on this particular matter of the Embakasi gas explosion. Let me get your initial thoughts before we get to the issue itself.
I think our disaster management system is sick. I mean, if it happened in Embakasi, why don't we have blood at Kenyatta Hospital? Yeah, that they are now asking members of the public to donate blood. Like, we are not even prepared. So all I can say that nothing is going to happen. We wait for another disaster. Every day is a new crisis. Shakahola happened and nothing happened. And now Embakasi has happened. We are waiting for the third one. And anybody who will be taken through the process, why do you, like I saw Governor Sakaja saying that those people who license this should vacate office. Why do they vacate office? For no apparent reason. Just take them through the court process. And if this one is investigated well, hell should roll, including resignation from the governor. Because where does the buck stops? The buck stops with the governor. The buck stops with the planners. The buck stops with government. So we don't even need to see people being asked to vacate office, being pulled to court. We should see resignations. Like, for example, NEMA officials who license this thing, they're not just specific officers. The whole idea, the MD, the guy in charge of NEMA, should just resign. It is the head, the back of the head. So we should ask the main person in charge of NEMA to go. And matters to do with the planning and county management, it's just the governor. He's an executive officer at management of the city. So I don't think if much shall be done. And in terms of disaster management, disaster preparedness, I don't think, the other time we had El Nino here, how many people did we lose? We lost 200 people. And then Shakahola 400, and now this disaster here. And we are losing a lot of people on road accidents all of a sudden. You know, people are dying left, right, and center, and people are 6, 10 road accidents. So our disaster prepared management is sick. And yes, it's happening in Embakasi, but what explains the reasons why we don't have even blood bank at Kenyatta Hospital, at Mbagathi Hospital, at Mama Lucy? I'm told that Mama Lucy Hospital, the people who are taken there, they were told that we have a few paracetamols. Otherwise, there's a chemist outside the hospital. You can buy yourself some medicine. These are people who are 90%, 80% burns from gas. You know, even the people who are still there at Mradi, people who are visiting there, you know, the gas fume is still there. People are still inhaling it. So it's still a dangerous area that needs to be, something needs to be done. Even the politicians who are visiting. To do what? To play politics? Yeah. You know, it should be a closed area, and there should be some management that happens there, and we have some system that works from government, that there's a setup thing. There were relatives who've not known whether their kids died or where their kids are in hospital or what will happen to their kin after it. But if whatever has been done for other disasters that happen will be done here. Remember, even the 1998 US Embassy bomb victims have never been compensated. How many years down the line? So nothing big will happen for this, I don't think.
Dr. your thought on this unfortunate incident?
Abdiaziz, thank you very much for hosting us once again. Happy New Year. I think I have not come the whole of this year. And good morning, my fellow analysts. First and foremost, we eulogize the families who have lost their loved ones in the incident that just happened. We know very well disasters. We are in a disaster-prone areas or cities where the initial planning of the city is not even designed, one, for disaster prevention, two, disaster response, three, and management of the disaster. You will find most of our homesteads are congested to the extent that if fire occurs anywhere, the response mechanism that is in place cannot access that particular location. And we leave it to Kenyans who are walking or carrying certain crude weapons to respond to those particular crises. And therefore, I think whenever crises come, we always talk about what happened, and we always comment in the context that these are new things. These are not new things. We have been facing disasters all through, and we know very well our town plan is very poor. Buildings are collapsing every day just because of poor planning and poor restriction or following of regulations that are in place. We know a number of fires which has occurred. People are not conscious about the disaster they go through. Therefore, I think when such disaster occurs, we must get to know a lot of things from it and learn to plan for the prevention of future disaster like this. Again, when you see our authorities who are mandated to check and ensure that all these disasters are prevented, the authorities never take any strict measures in ensuring that things which are placed somewhere are compliant and conform to the regulations and, of course, disaster prevention system. And therefore, I think, to me, we like blaming when the event occurs. My colleague has said it will have been the leadership or the management of those institutions to come forth and vacate offices. This has never been historically known in Kenya for anyone to leave office because of his consciousness in failing his responsibility. This has never happened. And therefore, it is something that you will call for it and will never bear any fruit. What happens now is that I think the society needs to think best way in which they're able to support the government and prevent disasters like this. For example, you'll find someone building structures. Have you seen these structures being erected, the apartments? You will find apartment has been erected, one in the middle, and all the other corners have been erected others. There are no ventilation in between. There's no way you can even rush and help in the event that electricity fault occurs and fire occurs, or even carbon or any other toxic chemical erupts within that structure. No one can access them. Are we looking at that disaster coming? We have disasters. We are actually having bombs in our own homesteads, and we need to see how best that can be addressed before disasters occur. As technology increases, a lot will going to come. And in Western countries, when you see how structures are built, every story building has a minimum distance between the other of 5-10 meters. Just imagine if it is every building is between 10 and 5 meters, 5 to 10 meters, then you are able, that is sufficient enough to have an access in the event that there is disaster. Do we have those structures in place? No. We want to scramble for the little space available to make sure that we maximize it and put a structure there. Little do you know, for all those of us who are rushing to buy those houses, the day disaster comes, I'm telling you, we will be in shit. This is an external thing. For example, these are gas which was put in the wrong place. Ideally, any flammable things are not supposed to be in residential areas. That is in the law. It is not something new. That is in NEMA's regulatory board. Again, we still have responsible people who have been mandated to regulate that, approving and licensing those facilities erected within residential areas. Okay, so in short, I think the system is where we have a problem. We need to think thorough, both with the society, the government, and our disaster or emergency response plan needs to be revisited, including the town planning. And therefore, the county governments plays great role as they are responsible for the planning of the towns, and the national government has responsibility to ensure that the regulatory bodies that are established to oversee this are given mandate to do their work.
Okay, Dr. Let me go to Sammy before I go to Mr. Oscar here. Sammy, we're talking about what Dr. is talking about, planning. In a day and age like Nairobi capital was even nominated to be among the best capitals in the continent of Africa. So is it poor planning that we have had this LPG gas and some of them were even, the governor called for them to be shut down. The fact that they are already there and they're not supposed to be there, who dropped the ball? That is the simple question I'm trying to ask.
Now, it's all in the implementation of all the laws. If you look at the Nairobi bylaws, those rules are there. Unfortunately, corruption is key. There's the willing giver and the willing taker. No one is ready to say, I will not take this. Do the right thing. And at the same time, stopping those industries at the moment is creating another problem. Joblessness. Because if you tell me to close my factory and I have 100 workers, I have sent those workers home, and therefore crime increases on the other side. So we should look at how we can go about it. They can be given time. Anybody who has, you are given this time, for example, time frame of 2 months, move those facilities out of the city. Simple and clear. If you look like towns, cities like Paris, Paris was designed to last several centuries, not a day. If you look at our drainage, right now you can see the contractors on site making drainage, but the drainage they are making is a 1 meter drainage. Will that drainage be sustainable in the next 10 years? Will that drainage be sustainable in the next 100 years? There should be serious planning, restructuring of this city. At the same time, we are proactive. Very soon you will see them going around demolishing. At the end of the day, you will see the president standing again and saying, we don't have jobs. Yet the little we have, we are destroying. Give them time. Tell them. The governor should not be reactive also. He's a learned friend and a good friend of mine, I know him. He shouldn't be reactive. What he should do is that he should tell these people, now any other plant that is handling flammable gas, that is within residential area, you are given 3 months to vacate, and then they are identified and given notices to move. Because this
Abdiaziz, Abdiaziz, I want to...
let him, no,
I just wanted to, you know, there's something that
Dr.
we may not want to
let him
inform the nation
Yes.
in regards to things which are not right, being given opportunity to, you know, gracing period. We don't give crime a gracing period. When someone is murdering someone, shall we tell him we'll give you 3 months to go and continue murdering, but make sure that by 3 months you should vacate this area?
No,
those are explosive. Those are explosive,
there.
and we don't actually give time frame on a crime scene. They should vacate as soon as possible. And I'm in agreement with the governor in regards to any illegal installation within estates that are flammable should be removed like yesterday.
Okay, Dr. Let him finish.
Yes.
And then I'm coming to you.
Being removed like yesterday, Dr. I agree with you. They should be removed, but they should be given time, because also consider there are people working. It is an investment. Somebody has a bank loan. Somebody, if you do that, you take somebody, you bring poverty back. Yes. At the same time, you see, if you look at developed countries, people are given time. Even somebody who has refused to move from a road reserve is told, buy that land, we will get another road like this. You look, there's a road I saw in China, an overpass imepita juu ya nyumba ya mtu, and there's no problem, because this person has spent. Let's not look at correcting the situation, at the same time creating another issue. I have people, workers that are 200. Look at these workers. Each one is earning around 40,000 Kenya shillings. Yes? At the end of the day, they are children. Then we start complaining of school fees. We start complaining of beggars on the street, because we have destroyed the few jobs we have. We are a developing country. Those countries started somewhere. We should have a law. We should have, give them time. Even if you stop them, you tell them, it is wrong to operate at this place, but move this. Yes? And they are moved also. They are assisted. They are granted a way to move those things rather than destroying them. You saw the other day when the illicit liquor was all over Kiambu, they went destroying industries. I know people who are now jobless. I know people who had big industries now are beggars. Yes? Why would we bring poverty? Give them time to move their resources. You can't tell me you found my car on the road, it doesn't have an insurance, leave this car here, go look for insurance. No, move the car. Help me tow the car to where it will be, and I'll get an insurance.
Oscar?
I think for the first time today, I'm finding Melly a bit contradictory to himself, right? He says these people were there because of corruption. What worries me? At what point do we have these things in the wrong place? That is where the problem comes. Why do government allow, for example, people to build houses in lands that is not theirs, then you come and demolish them? You know, if we keep on doing the demolition and construction and demolition and construction, we will never move, we will never develop. For example, if you know about this Kirima land down there, it's a vast area that people have built more than 50 or 100,000 houses. So the court has said that they should be demolished. Get me right. Now the question is, how did we have a government that allowed that construction in that particular place? Road reserve, why do we have to allow people to construct roads, to construct houses in road reserves? Whatever he's talking about, giving these people time, you are not playing with the time bomb. He's talking about, like, for example, alcoholism. I mean, the newspaper says today, 6 people died in Kirinyaga. You know, people are drinking poison. Like, what do we do? Do we give them time to allow them 3 months to allow people to continue drinking poison for 3 months? Really?
You know, Omondi, as a student of literature, you are trying to understand me the wrong way.
No. I'm just trying to wait.
I am trying us to look at the investment. Look at the investment there.
You know, we cannot have a situation where we have an investment of people producing poison for people to drink, then we call it an investment. It cannot be an investment. The area is called Muradi area. If you've been there, there are no even roads that can access that place. This is gas. And we are saying it is bad that we got it there. But now, this one has caused a disaster. What do we do moving forward? I think if you ask me, if you allow those people time to move, if I was the governor, for example, if I allow those people to move, you only allow them 1 hour. 1 hour, remove your things, or we bomb it. Because we are courting disaster. There are 200-300 people whose lives have been shattered because of this rubbish.
Okay.
Right.
Mind your language, okay.
Oh, sorry.
You're on TV and kids are watching. Okay,
yes, I
Dr.
think
Isaack, aside from what Sammy and Oscar are raising, we're also talking about the regulations that are supposed to be implemented. Is it the regulations that have a problem, or is it the enforcement?
No, I think Kenyans, we have a lot of regulations. And above all, we have contradictory regulations. We always form new regulations whenever there is a disaster. And yet, we forget the regulations which was already in place. So regulations in Kenya is not scarce. The scarcity is enforcement. Who are the ones supposed to ensure that those regulations are realized? And when you see in every institution, it's not only NEMA now. It's not, we are not talking about NEMA. We are not talking about other regulatory enforcers. We are talking about the whole system, whereby one individual who is employed to make sure that certain regulations are enforced will want to do the enforcement in a manner that will going to benefit him. He will not going to do it the way it is required. For example, I mean, a simple thing. How did the community, we have community structures. We have community policing, we have community leaders within the settlement areas or estate committees or societies. We have the town planners, we have the physical planners, we have the county enforcement officers, we have the Kenya Police, we have the NEMA, we have other institutions which are supposed to oversee these institutions who are mandated to enforce the regulations. All these have not played their part. And I understand actually now. Earlier on, I was trying to hesitate why the president is enforcing some hard decisions. And I think I can feel some sense that Kenya is only when hard decisions are taken is when people realize that something can be done. For example, if for example, we are not taking a hard decision on illegal installation of gas and petroleum products within estates, which are not supposed to be, then it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we are having a time bomb, like my colleague has just put it. And you know why aircrafts are dangerous weapons in the world? It's because they are carrying gas weapons. They are the chemical they are carrying, the oil, the fuel they use, is indeed equivalent to a nuclear power. And that's why their security are so much ensured and taken into consideration. So my take in terms of authorities who are supposed to enforce these regulations is that they have indeed failed us. And their failure is the one we are now celebrating, where we are losing people. We are focusing on few individuals who have played just a small role. We are not looking at the bigger picture. In the same place where we are talking about this incident in Embakasi, where this incident has occurred, we have other time bombs. We have chemical producing industries within those estates. And if fire touches those chemicals, they are as good as wiping the whole of Embakasi. Do we look into all those ones? They were placed there before those establishments were developed. Why did we allow those next to those installations? And yet, those installations were there before them. And then if you have made that decision to put residentials next to those installations, then it is important for you to decide where you will relocate those industries so that the people who are living around that area are safe. We are talking about cancers and diseases that are not explainable or not treatable in our health institutions. The bottom line is that we are inhaling chemicals, we are eating chemicals, and we are living with chemicals, and definitely we will going to find the result of chemicals as being developing funny diseases that are untreatable and goes deep into our pockets to go to India and treat cases that cannot be even treated.
Okay. Sammy, as you respond, policies as well. We have policies in place to tackle such issues. Oscar is talking about we do not have, in terms of the disaster management, we are a little bit poor on that. It seems we are reactive instead of being proactive. So in terms of policies, what needs to change from where you're sitting?
Now, I started by saying we are a reactive nation and not a proactive nation. The policies are there. The regulations are there. The implementation part is where we have the problem. Because so much has gone deep. The water has run deep. Because if you were to buy land, for example, today if I get land outside KBC here, and perhaps I want to erect a residential, and perhaps this is an industrial area, I have to put a notice of change of user. You might find that perhaps that person had done the change of user, but with our ignorance, Kenyans don't read. They just pass, they look at a notification, oh, huyu jamaa ameweka up, and they go. Yes, they don't know how to follow up. Perhaps that estate, that plot could have been changed to commercial, and perhaps even those things were done there. And I want to take notice with our police, for example. They are reactive. They arrest you and then go and investigate. That is a problem. In developed countries, we start with investigations. You have come, you have reported this, we investigate. Once we get concrete evidence, we arrest you, arraign you in court. And it takes a shorter time, even for the court. You see, they are still asking for 21 days to detain somebody. Yes? 21 days, then what will they get in 21 days? Yes? They should have gotten to the root cause of all this. With this guy still moving around like nothing will happen to him? He may not know. He thinks but right now, even if he is in custody, some things are being done underground to cover that, to do the cover-up. So in the implementation part, if we take hard stance, like the way the president sometimes take a hard stand and they say this is the way we go, yes, rather than taking corners. If you give an excuse, but Daktari is trying to say that we cannot give them time. Yes. If I were to stop it today, then what next? If it was to take 10 years for him to move, what next? Just look at that ferry, or was it a ship that parked somewhere? Then there was a very big explosion, and it had parked there for almost several years. Look at today, somebody comes with he's a truck driver, he carries petroleum, and in the evening he comes, parks outside his home, yes, goes home and sleep with a full tank, mafuta. These are the disasters in the waiting. Implementation is the most important thing. And if you go today, leave alone talking about NEMA, there is somebody who signed allowing that plant to be there. That is the person they should go for. Why do you want the board chair of NEMA who was not there? Even if he's retired, we will go and look for him. Unfortunate for those who are deceased, we'll tell them rest in peace. Okay. But now we go for the person who signed and said, you see, if today you have invited us as your guests here, it is you who invited us, isn't it? Yes? Why should we go for the MD? Yes? Because you are fully responsible. You know the person you brought. You know whom you brought on board. You knew you have allowed a plant to be established in a residential area. And sometimes we blame the plant and we find that it is the residential area which found the plant there. Are you getting that? So what do we go? We go for the owners of those buildings again. You see, it's a merry-go-round. It's a rat going around a circular ring. Yes. At the end of the day, you will hear in 3-4 years, there was no evidence, there was no what, and everybody goes home.
Okay, we're getting ahead of the investigation, but the investigation is still ongoing, and today they're appearing before court. As you respond, Oscar, we have over 600 families now affected. What should be the priority? What should we take care right now?
The first thing I said is about our sick disaster management. I propose that maybe we should one day have a whole ministry, not just a department of disaster management in the country. Because every day is a brand new disaster. That's what we're dealing with. The disasters we are facing as a country, we move from one disaster to the other, to the other, to the other. So we need a standalone ministry, just like the Ministry of Roads. which manages disaster. So that we are sure that anytime a disaster happens, we don't wait for the Red Cross. We need a body which is more proactive and more organized than even the Red Cross. Red Cross is an NGO. What are NGOs? NGOs are non-governmental organizations that just aid government in terms of failures or what government cannot do. But actually in terms of data, in terms of information, it should be governmental. Then NGOs can come and assist. There's AMREF, Doctors Without Borders who can come and assist. There are many, many, many Medicine Sans Frontiers. There are many, many NGOs that can help. But the lead organization should be government. So we need a proactive disaster management team. That's what we know that we can follow up. That if you go to that ministry, you will know that we lost 160 people in El Nino and their families, blah, blah, blah. They were moved to this place. Even now, the team is still there working, as much as we've gone 1 month past El Nino.
Yes.
Same to other disasters. Otherwise, if we continue like this, it is so chaotic. We don't know what's happening. For example, we need always a desk. That anytime a disaster happens, like in Embakasi, it happened at 2 a.m. in the morning. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I expected to see a government desk. Anybody who's lost a relative or something should report to that desk. We need to have a system where there are tents already constructed. There's food for these people. They're everything. So that even the people who are contributing, for example, yesterday, there's a new party leader, I think they contributed 3 million towards this disaster. Whom do you give even this 3 million? I myself as an individual, I can go and say, okay, I'm a volunteer, I want to assist anywhere. But whom do I assist? How? There's uncoordinated system that is going on there. You should be able to go there as an individual, say, I have 2 bags of flour. I want to give it out. But these people are 600 people, families. Do I give to one family? Do I give to 2 families? No. I need to have a central place where we place it, and then it goes down. It goes down to those people. Even the people who are contributing. Today, Kalonzo Musyoka, the party leader for Wiper, will be visiting that place. Maybe he has a contribution. Contributing to who? Do you know that when we had a disaster at Londiani, there's a trailer that hit the traders there?
Yes.
There was money that was given to these people. This money didn't go to, they didn't compensate the right people. There was some corruption and these people didn't get their money. Why? Because of lack of coordination in terms of disaster management.
Okay.
So I think what should happen, we need to have a proper policy work, proper policy framework.
Okay.
We have to have not just a department, a whole like a ministry, which gets its money from the exchequer directly.
Okay.
Daktari,
before I come to you, the live link, then I'll be come to, and of course we'll be talking about, given this is an area of expertise, the psychological effect on those victims. Over 600 of them, families have been affected. We have over 250 of them in hospitals. So what are the psychological effects of such an incident, or the magnitude of that particular incident, not just emotionally or even physically, but psychologically as well. But I want to take you live to the corridors of the August House. We do understand that the Affordable Housing Bill 2023 public hearing of a joint committee session of the Housing and the Finance Committee is currently ongoing. And first up is none other than the Attorney General, that is Justin Muturi. Let's get to listen in on what is happening there. Also, we do understand the Council of Governors will be coming before that particular committee this morning. Okay, I'm being informed you're trying to get a hold of that particular link. Once we do, we'll take you live to the corridors of the August House. You do remember that the Affordable Housing Bill 2023 currently in public hearing. It had its first reading on the floor of the House last year, and currently it is public engagements. And right now they have reached to the extent of talking to the relevant government institutions so that they can be able to write a conclusive report that they will table before the parliamentarians once they resume next week on Wednesday. But Daktari, to you, the question was the psychological effect on over those 600 families who have been able to affected by this incident, unfortunate incident, and nobody foresaw coming. So what should be the first need of that particular victim? Because you know how Kenyans, you know how Africans we are wired at the end of the day. As much as we have witnessed a traumatic event, you're told to move on.
Abdiaziz, a number of things have happened in terms of psychological effect of the disaster that occurred to those families. If I categorize them into three, we have the immediate psychological effect on those who have been affected. Families that are in hospitals, they are going through depression, they are going through severe traumatic depression, and those who are already in hospital are psychologically, one, having fear, two, they are fearing that they are likely not to get proper medical care. Thirdly, they are fearing of where to start next because they have gone completely zero. And of course, fourthly, they are thinking of their loved ones might have died or they will die. So these are things that surrounds an individual who goes through a trauma, a disaster like this. Secondly, there are those who have already lost their loved ones. These ones have, again, they are going through a grief moment where all of a sudden they lost their loved ones. Therefore, this has also caused psychological trauma. Thirdly, those surrounding those areas who have not been directly affected, but they faced the trauma, they faced the disaster. These ones have also traumatic, they have traumatic stress disorder, what we call PTSD. PTSD. And above all, currently, the ones we are looking at are these ones who are going through medication in the hospitals, those ones who have been affected directly. Our colleagues have established a center in which they are providing psychosocial support and counseling, first aid counseling at the moment. And we know it does not end there. This is immediate things that occur. But this is something along with them for those who will come out of the hospitals. It could go years.
Okay, Daktari, I do understand that your microphone has an issue. We'll try to sort that out and we'll be back to you. Let me go back to Melly. We have already had one solution here from Oscar. He says we need to have a ministry that deals with disaster alone. What other things need to change so that in future we do not have such incidences? Or if and when it happens, God forbid, we are able to deal with it there and then?
Now, I also think that in every ward we should have a disaster management unit that is there. For example, firefighting equipment for every ward, because you find sometimes our city is poorly planned such that the fire engines originate from the CBD. By the time they make through the jam in the CBD, it's 1 hour. And that's why, and then come back for water again in the CBD. We need even hydrants and those water points outside the CBD, so that every other day, a driver wakes up in the morning, knows that my position is to go to Langata. I drive my engine to Langata, station it there. I close work at 4, another driver takes over for the night shift, rather than everything originating from the CBD. There was a plan that they were to do in every slum. Something like that. I don't know how whether it was implemented or not. That is the first. Number two, the technology has moved such that we have nowadays a way that we can have fireballs in our institutions, whereby in case there is a fire, it senses some heat beyond a certain region, for example, 30 degrees. That heat makes a fireball burst and producing carbon dioxide to deal with the fire. And I'm sure by the time the heat goes to 30, human beings would have left the unit. Nowadays, we have even buildings, modern buildings coming with fire prevention mechanisms such that they have even fire spreaders, water spreaders, sprinklers that are fitted, yes, and fire detectors. And I think in a serious industry like that, that was a fault that somebody must be held account to, because you are dealing with flammable things, and therefore you should have fire prevention mechanism. We have fire assembly points. Were there fire assembly points in that area? Yes, because if I am dealing with gas, I should have a bigger fire assembly area. where in case of an explosion, people would rush very far from where it is. But unfortunately, we have such things everywhere that are not being implemented. And that's why I said the implementation part, even our constitution is very clear on these things. Yes, but unfortunately, the implementation part, somebody wakes up in the morning, goes roam the streets of Nairobi, yet he is supposed to be somewhere checking these things. Yes, at the end of the day, Kenyans should learn one thing. Let us not be compromised on our duties. Let us not be compromised when we are, because at the end of the day, it will come back to you. Unfortunately, we point fingers elsewhere. Even the person responsible points fingers elsewhere. As another solution, let us take responsibility where we fail. And we say, we are sorry, I think this is where I was supposed to operate from, and I have failed you. Yes, these are the steps I am taking to remedy it. Rather than stand on cars, on top of cars, give addresses, even politicians visiting those places, they are not helping. Because at the end of the day, what are they going to do? It's just to get sympathy from those people. Instead of sympathizing with the people, they go also to get sympathy. We realize every other time when there is something, politicians have to show up. Yes, the governor should have sat down with this team. Look at where the problem is before reacting. Because there must be, first, you have a meeting with your team. What was the problem? What is the solution? Even to the extent of giving 280,000 to over 600 families. How will they share that amount?
Okay,
that
we
is
can't know
why
if they had a meeting because we weren't there. The county is at City Hall. We can't know if they had that particular meeting. But Oscar, also, he raises a pertinent question in terms of having accessible roads, especially in areas, not just Mradi, but in our slum areas, where we witness fires every time consistently. Even the firefighters themselves say that they cannot access those areas due to inaccessibility of the roads. So could we see an expansion of those particular areas? Because if we start, let's say, for example, government says we expand those roads, it will open a Pandora's box because some of these residents are not willing to move.
The thing is that the problem was supposed to be solved by 2010 Constitution, where when we decided to go devolve
Functions.
to devolve functions. The idea was that maybe in the next 10 years after 2010, which is 2020, we should have seen a reduction of slum areas because we should have controlled rural urban migration. Because if we took the functions to the counties, so we should have reduced that migration. The truth of the matter is that the population in the cities, all urban areas, cannot be matched with the services that those urban areas can be able to deal with. Even if you give it to Governor Sakaja, county government, the population of the slums is too many, cannot be controlled. Even if you're talking about even controlling of these fires, ideas that is bringing about, the fact that we don't even have proper housing, the mushrooming of slums. That means we won't have even roads because people have to sell in roads. It is in town. You see people selling in roads, in road reserves, in the central business district. So the thing is that it's unfortunate, and I always say that the mistake that we could have done is that when we had our 2010 Constitution, we gave it to people who might have opposed it to implement it. So the idea of implementing the Constitution, is not in the DNA of the people, the governance which we gave in place. The first government in 2013 and the government in 2017 or 2022, the DNA of implementing, people who are centrally looking to the center, does not look to the devolved centers. You know very well that we've had even parties like Pesa Mashinani and all this, the struggle between whatever happens down there and the center. And we've had even the BBIs of this world. Like, let's take 60% or 35% to the devolved centers. But we find the press at the center. There are politicians and leaders who really want to hold so much at the center. The more we continue holding so much resources, so much power, so much everything that we collect to the center, we will still be having such disasters. We will still not be having, we will still have youths who have to go get education, for example. They have to come to Nairobi. Because most of the universities are concentrated in the city. All the services are concentrated in the city. The industries are concentrated in the city. So people are moving so much to the center. When they get to the center without employment, for example, which is really suffering, we are suffering from unemployment in the country. Then they move to the center are without jobs. Automatically, they will have to go and live in the slums. When the pressure gets to the land in the slums, they will have more small houses, even the road reserves. So the problem is much bigger. The problem was supposed to be solved with the devolved units to avoid the rural-urban migration. Give more fundings, more power, more monies to the youth who are doing their agricultural job. People who are skill-based at the devolved centers, so that we sort the problem at the centers, so that we reduce the pressure. But so long as we have this pressure and we continue to have this pressure, we'll have more hawkers in the city, we'll have more matatus without even parking spaces. We are quoting disasters all the time.
Okay, Oscar. Dr. Finish your point in terms of the psychological support that one ought to seek, as well as you respond to the decentralization of services from not just here the capital but to rural areas, so that we
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, psychologically, when disaster occurs, particularly fire, there is a risk of severe psychological effects.
Okay. I'm being informed we need to take a short commercial break before they cut you off air, Daktari, in just a few. But that is the conversation that we are having in terms of what transpired at Mradi area of Embakasi. We're trying to look for solutions. You can also chime in into the conversation at KBC Channel 1, at Abdiaziz Hashim 1. In studio, we do have Omondi, a political analyst, Sammy, Melly, a political analyst, and Dr. Isaack, Hassan, a governance as well as a political analyst. Don't go too far. We'll be back with this conversation. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Our conversation still focuses on the aftermath of the Embakasi gas explosion. I told you this morning we do anticipate the owner of that particular establishment and the 4 suspended NEMA officials to appear before the corridors of the justice, and in terms of the lead investigator urging the court to detain those individuals for the next 21 days as investigation continues. We want to wind up on that particular topic before I take you live to the Augusta House. I do understand that the Attorney General is making his presentation before the Joint Committee of the Finance and that of Housing of the National Assembly, or in regards to the Affordable Housing Bill 2023. Dr. Before we went off air, you were talking about the psychological support, as well as decentralizing services here in the capital so that we avoid the rural-urban migration.
Yeah, I think the victims will go through post-traumatic stress disorder, as I mentioned earlier on. Of course, they will going to have also depression, and above all, they're going to have physical health effect in terms of their physical appearance. People who go through burns will have scars in their bodies, particularly when it is on visible areas where one will not want for it to be seen. The other effect that perhaps which is a long term is that, and which may even affect children, as I was talking about the ones who are in the neighborhood but have not been directly affected. These children will going to develop anxiety, they're going to develop fear, sadness, sleep disruption, distress, dreams. You will see someone viewing the scene the moment the person goes to sleep, and this will continue affecting them. Others will develop, anger, irritable angers. So these are effects that generally are associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, and this will going to affect each and every individual who have gone or have experienced that effect, and of course those who have also physically responded to those disasters. The police officers who have gone and collected those dead bodies will also go through post-traumatic stress disorder. Leaders, as we were talking about, who have decided to voluntarily go and visit the scene will also cause, incident will cause depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. They may pretend that now they are leaders and they are not visualizing the effect of what they are going through psychologically, but eventually this comes slowly as it builds up, and at one point in time they're going to experience severe depression as a result of long-term effect of post-traumatic stress disorder. Things that needs to be put in place is that I think we minimize those who are not technical people to unnecessarily going into scenes of crimes or areas where disaster occurs, as they are going to be affected directly without without them knowing. Secondly, for those who have responded to the disaster, the police officers, the medics, the county askaris and officials who have gone there, I think we need to establish psychosocial support system for them so that they go through sessions of psychotherapy to avoid, a long-term post-traumatic stress disorder effect, which will go into, result them into depression.
Okay.
Finally, the whole nation is stressed, depressed, because disasters does not just end up there. There are people who have watched through the television. You people who have gone to the ground to report the incident. All these people need psychosocial support. They need to go and find psychotherapy in the nearest place that they have psychologists or counselors, and seek medical attention. Let them not just assume. If you are dreaming because you have seen certain incidents, you have seen someone who has been burnt completely, and every other time you sleep, you see that image coming up, that is depression, and that will going to affect you seriously. And before it goes out of hand, it is important for you to seek medication.
Okay.
In the effect of on the issue of decentralization and issues of urban, rural, and rural-urban migration, I think for me, I don't see that as an issue. For me, in the context of the incident, it's all about planning. We go back to the drawing board, we plan our cities. In other countries, actually, gases are transported from almost 50 to 100 kilometers installations from the cities, and pipes are the ones which provide these supplies of gas into the houses. You will not see installations in residents. And that, I think, there are a lot of things we can do. There are a lot of things we can subject to the people who do the business. If you must supply gas, you supply from a very far area, bring it into the homesteads through piping, and that piping must be regulated like the Kenya pipeline. These are the ways that we can minimize risk related to gas explosions and fuel explosions. But when we go back, I just want one thing. Let's plan our cities well. Let's enforce bylaws of the county government and ensure that laws governing regulatory bodies are also enforced. If that is done, we will not have a lot of problem. And the bottom line is corruption. Because corruption has haunted us to the extent that we don't care about who dies. We care about what we get. And even the one who is getting money most likely might be the victim of that disaster. And he may not even know that indeed this victim he will be a victim, and yet he has just pocketed some little money to go and approve some few things. Most of them I know there are officials from NEMA who live along that area. So it is indeed, I know the officials from city council, planning people who are living there, they are affected. And therefore our problem is planning. Let's do our town planning proper and enforce the regulations that are already in place. We don't need to invent new things. They are already there.
Going to bulletins, I want to bring this conversation now to our studios. Let me get Sammy's thought on this Affordable Housing Bill 2023. You can even hear the AG talking about, because it is an issue that was raised by none other than the NLC chair yesterday before the same committee, that it could come to a point where the national and the county government are fighting over land, availability of space of the land, because the national government is making a request, as well as the county government are making a request to NLC to provide land for these houses to be built.
Yes, originally we had the National Housing Corporation that was dealing with affordable housing before. At the moment, I think all land is held in trust for the people of Kenya by the government. And the government, there are two levels of government, the national government and the county government. The only thing we have right now is that the county government and the national government are competing instead of completing one another.
Complementing.
Or complementing. They should be able to work together in unison and in sync. Because if you look at the same thing, the person they are fighting over is a Kenyan. Because there are no people who belong to county governments and there are no people who belong to the national government. They are Kenyans. And therefore, if at this point, the land, the county government says this land is ours, the national government says help us. They should work together, form a committee, sit down, say this is how we are working together going forward. Because it's all about consultation and no bulldozing. You see, if you use bulldozing, there are people who are good at that. But at the moment, the national government should consult in case it needs a county government, like I hear in Kiambu, there was something like that. And Mudhoni Omushomba was talking about that thing, that what is the value of our land taken and given as affordable housing. Because, but we should look at the Kenyan, the common mwananchi. At the end of the day, the affordable housing should be for the common man. In fact, even I agree with the situation, just the way I agree with a marriage or a wedding, okay, but how it will be done is what it brings the problem. Because if you were to put these houses, for example, at the cost of 4,000, why would you tell me to move from a house of 800 in Kibra to go and pay 2,500 or 4,500? Because it's affordable. How affordable is affordable? And that's why I was thinking, the government has a good idea, but the implementation part is where there's a problem. Yes, the government should consult widely, and that's why they talk of public participation. And at the same time, the government cannot do everything. This is the private sector. If the government can facilitate the private sector to develop affordable housing, for example, and help in running it, we can get even more houses being built and affordable ones. I've seen in Soweto. Soweto, the affordable housing coming up in Soweto is something that even a common man in South Africa can afford. But if we go to storied buildings, we insist that this is the amount that you should pay, we will still have slums moving elsewhere. We would have moved the slum from Kibra now to the upper Karen, where there is space. You see, or even into the forest. Yeah.
It's some of the issues that were raised during the public hearing that in terms of the reduction of the 10% of the deposit should be considered reviewed downwards. Oscar, as I get your thought on that, the Council of Governors will be appearing shortly before the same committee. I think they will be coming to address this particular issue of land, which the National Land Commission was talking about yesterday.
Yes, one thing that surprises me over this one is that government should not participate in business. And problems that we are dealing with here, it is because government has gone into business. If I teach public administration in the university, and what we say is that public administration is so distinct from private administration. If you go to Gandhi at University of Nairobi, we teach public administration. But if you go to Kabete, Lower Kabete campus, they teach business administration. There's a difference between business administration and public administration. Business administration is motivated by profits. Business administration. Public administration is motivated by one thing, service delivery. So the mentality and the mind of these two individuals who are managing public and managing private are completely different, because one is motivated by profits, one is motivated by. So if we talk about affordable housing, buying land, ownership of land, what percentage, deposits, these are private entities' language. What was supposed to happen over these issues of land, of government? I would suggest why don't you just do a simple thing that used to be done by, for example, previous governments? Previous governments did housing for civil servants, for example. If you go to Siaya, a county where I come from, if you go to Nyeri, they housed their medical staff. And they housed people who work at the DC's office then. Apart from that, there were other houses that were done by National Housing Corporation. And there was a scheme, government scheme of how you own those houses. But when you start paying of deposits and we don't know 4 million, 5 million shillings, this was supposed to be left to the private to do that work. So I wished that the government was so serious that you able to do buildings for civil servants, people who work at the county level, people who work at hospitals in those respective counties, to ease it down the private, so that when the private people do houses, they house civilians, and automatically the prices of house rents will come down.
Okay.
That will work. But whatever, even whatever I've seen the AG talking about here, they're just trying to work backwards. And there's no sync between county government. You will see county council of governors. There's no sync between central government and the county government. For example, if you talk about land, every area we stand in the country is a county government area. Here we are under county government of Nairobi. And also this place is under the national government.
It is a sector that is not fully devolved yet, yes.
Yes, it's a sector that's not fully devolved, but which land belongs to the county, which land belongs to the national government.
Yes.
That's why they should work in sync. Number 3, the National Land Commission. This is a government entity. And when you see the AG coming to contradict again in public.
No, he didn't contradict.
He did contradict, but he said, I had somebody say here that there was a problem.
Yes, and he said we have rectified that.
You know, he's working back. He's trying to work back and say that whatever we've done, you know, they moved a notch higher. These things that they're talking about were supposed to have been considered at the onset, looked at the onset, and whatever the National Land Commission said yesterday, that I think our organization, our entity, should have been involved in developing of the act.
Yes.
He didn't even say what they were supposed to do.
It's a public hearing. Don't forget, Oscar, because they're here to collect their views so that they can include in the bill itself.
When we collect views, these views are different. When you collect it from a civilian, it's different from people in authority. I guess want to that when you collect it from the AG is supposed to be the advisor, the legal advisor of government.
Yes.
So he is person in authority. Same to National Lands Commission. It's different from when you're collecting it from a Mamboga who comes from Kibera, because they're not in authority and their word is not in authority. But the AG, we believe that he was part and parcel of drafting of the act, of drafting of the bill, and these things were supposed to have been considered yesterday, involving the National Land Commission. They should not come in a public fora to tell us that why we're not involved. You know, when government is working in sync. And one Chinua Achebe once wrote that if the center cannot hold, things fall apart. I think somehow there's some center that is not holding, and that is why things are falling apart.
Given that the public hearings do not end and the parliament is set to consider that report, we wait to see if that will be included as well.
Thank you.
Daktari, we're also talking not just about the deficit that we have in our urban centers. Isaack, the last time they were before the same committee of the finance led by Molo Member of Parliament Kimani Kuria clearly stated that we have a deficit of houses of 200,000 in the urban centers. And with this affordable housing bill and with the projects that are being undertaken by the government right now, is this particular project timely?
Abdiaziz, I think my colleague has put it very well. We still have a lot of leakages in the government structure. In that, my friend AG, when he comes on a platform, he gets information from all the arms of the government that deals with specific matters and tasked to do so. Land Commission is the owner of, it's assumed that the Land Commission is the owner of all lands in this nation. And therefore they have the in-depth of the land and of course all the things that are supposed to be done on those particular lands in terms of who owns what and where. But I think one important thing that I should bring out is that the government has become sober now. Our government was on campaign gear when they formed the act. You remember last year. And people criticized a lot on the issue of housing, among many other things. But the main issue which generated that discussion was lack of institutionalization of the operationalization of the whole issue. Institutions that will ensure that whatever you want to do is transparent and accountable and is able to be implemented in a manner that each and every person understands what is going on. This has not happened before. And we are happy now the government now is sober. The government now is doing their work now the way they are supposed to do. If the AG, the National Land Commission have all presented their views at Parliament in order for parliamentarians to formulate a structure that will going to facilitate the implementation of the housing, which is called the National Housing Development Fund,
Yes.
I think we are heading somewhere. And it's something that we can say, yes, it is indeed, we are able to deliberate on what is being discussed, contrary to previous time. In terms of Social Housing Fund and in terms of National Housing Development Fund, I think it is important. The AG was trying to explain the differences and to avoid overlap in terms of their role. They are seeking for an amendment. If I was in this nation and I had an authority, I wouldn't have established a new institution. I would have built on the Social Housing Fund and ensure that we mandate them further by amending the law and to make sure that they pick up the National Housing Development Fund activities. That way, we will avoid having multiple establishments that, indeed, if you look at it, there will be a thin layer between them in terms of their role. Therefore, you cannot exactly differentiate what this plays and what the other one's role is. But again, if proper systems are put in place, an act of parliament that will going to guide the institution, and I see there will be also a fund management institution where the AG was saying there will be a CEO who will be overseeing the establishment of and the development of and implementation of the National Housing Fund. That way we are heading somewhere. And I tend to think the government now has now embarked on proper installation of institutions that will going to guide us in terms of what they intend to implement. In terms of land ownership, actually there is no land owned by national and there is no land owned by the county. The ownership of land is still bestowed at National Land Commission, and they are the ones who are still producing title deeds. The counties do not produce title deeds. They only give you allotment letter, purposely to show that this parcel of land is owned by this specific person. On that note, because they are on the ground, they are facilitating the National Land Commission to process the ownership of that particular parcel for specific intended people, other than having the rift on land issues. And therefore, I don't think if it's a big issue in terms of who owns where and where the rift is. If this specific land was allocated to municipalities, the municipalities had their own land, which they were intended to do their own business earlier on, and they have space to do so, like the way a school can have a space of a piece of land which was allocated by the community. And if that has been owned by the counties as their land, which indeed it is, then if they want to give out for development of the people of that county, because if you are putting a structure like low cost housing, then the consumers of those houses will be the residents of that county. Therefore, it does not have a lot of, it's Kenyans way where when an issue comes, people want to poke their an issue on it so that their ego comes up. The county government will want to see themselves as also competing with the national government. In any case, if you look at it and go back to the documentations in land ownership and how these are structured, it would have been prudent for the government to deal with the National Land Commission. The National Land Commission will have given all the lands available, both with the county and the national government, in order for it to be utilized. And of course, there is that intergovernmental arrangement where they have to do the necessary agreement in terms of someone just coming, building houses in a place will not be wise. So definitely there will be some arrangement among themselves. In terms of housing.
Okay, Dr. Just a minute.
In terms of the number of housing, the gap we have in urban areas, I think this gap will continue. I don't think if a gap will ever end in housing within in a country where population is increasing every year without control, population of the control. But again, filling the gap will be essential. And I think the project is wise. How that project will going to be disseminated and how I'm going to own a house. And Mama Mboga, who is in Kibra, will going to own a house. This is the contentious issue. But in terms of having those houses in place, I think the government is moving in the right direction. Let them establish the necessary regulations that will go into convince each and every person that this property that being installed here will definitely be useful for this particular person.
Okay, just a minute. I'm coming back to you, gentlemen. We'll be telling you more in our subsequent bulletins. Let's come back to the studio. We're talking about the Affordable Housing Bill 2023 was coming to Sammy here. We were talking about initially earlier. We witnessed what happened in Embakasi. We said that one of the possible solutions could be slum upgrading so that the roads can be accessible for not only for the firefighters, but services can as well improve. Will affordable housing itself solve this particular issue?
Yes, because the affordable housing already, there are plans that are drawn on how the houses will be constructed. And therefore, there will be no encroachment of one house, structure on the other, because they are clear, labeled, and drawn spaces in between. The thing that is there is that the big question actually is, will that be affordable for the slum dwellers? That is the question, the big question. And that's why Dr. had said, if they were to lower the initial deposit amount, they would also lower the tariffs you pay or the premiums you pay monthly, so that rather than force us for 20 or 30 years, it can go up to 50. You can hand over that responsibility to your children. But at the end of the day, you know that they have a house to live in, a house that belongs to them. I know some people who still live in those old Jericho and Mabati and Bahati houses that were built in the 70s and the 80s, and they still hold them even for their families. It shouldn't be forced on them that you will clear within 15 years or 20 or 25. It should be a little bit flexible. At the same time, the houses themselves, the criteria of awarding the houses, because at the end of the day, if I have not contributed and I live in the slums, where will I go? I will look for another slum. So it should be also all-inclusive, that any other person, and that's why I talked about the private sector being pulled in. For example, let's assume KBC is a private sector. They tell KBC, your workers will not benefit in the affordable housing, but we have given you this incentive to make sure that your workers are housed. Yes, you make sure that you organize, for example, a mortgage for your workers, such that we know that is KBC affordable housing. Affordable housing project, or that is another installations affordable housing project. You see, like that, because the private sector right now are only left to scramble for the contracts to construct them. At the end of the day, there are also people who have invested in real estate, for example. If I'm invested in real estate and the government is also making sure that everybody has a house, these Kenyan government houses becomes cheaper than these others, we might end up in the 30 or 40 years have empty houses, empty, because everybody has rushed to this cheap one and they have left this one. We will leave some investors who have invested for 20, 50 years without anyone buying their products, because already the government has given, and that's why Omondi here said, the government should not involve itself in business. What it should do is facilitate business, make sure and also follow up on the implementations and the standards that are regulated. What will happen if the government has given a contract to Melly, for example, to build affordable houses? Yes, it has given me a very tight budget to work with, and I produce what is not standard, because I'm also looking at a way of earning an extra kill from that work.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I have been left wondering, I mean, whoever will consume that product is also squeezed or forced such that you must subscribe to this, you must subscribe to get it. I thought it should be open now for any person in Kibera slums who is willing to get these houses. There are houses for 1,500. There are houses for 2,500. And the maximum they can go is 8,500.
Okay.
Yes, and that is affordable, actually, if I were to say affordable. There are people at the moment whose pay slips cannot even allow them to go to the two-third rule, because already they have committed them in other issues. Yes, you have brought the NHIF, you have brought the housing levy, you have brought all these other things. Again, the same person earning, and you see the most squeezed person are salaried people.
Okay.
Yes.
And Omondi, we're talking about that issue because I had the opportunity of covering some of these engagements when they were having an engagement with people from Makadara, Kibera, Dagoretti North, and these other parts of the or sub-counties of the capital. The issues that were raised there, even for the people who live in Kibra, they said they do no longer want to be called slum dwellers. We do not be called Kitongo Jiduni. We need to live in decent houses at the end of the day. So let's say, for example, if the government lowers that deposit of 10%, shouldn't this be a better option as opposed, I'm not fighting the private developers here, but in terms of comparing those two scenarios, it's like the private sector, you'll pay more, as opposed to this government initiative of the affordable housing. If they reduce that deposit of 10%, will that be a viable option for that person living in Kibra now?
One thing, it is not certain and it's not guaranteed that if you leave it to the private sector, you will pay more. No, that's not how the private sector works. The private sector is normally controlled by market forces. It's not by any other thing. Market forces. That's why the private sector is able to bring houses worth 500 shillings, worth 1,000 shillings, worth 200,000 shillings, worth, you see, because it is the market that controls them. Yeah. But anyway, because of this, you're discussing about slum upgrading. You know, me being an academic and a researcher, we always base our arguments on research. If you ask me to be part and parcel of this thing, the first thing I will do, go to the Kibera upgraded slums, the houses that were done there. Do a finding. How was it conceptualized? How was it operationalized? And at the end of the day, did the expected end user benefit? Because when the idea was being conceptualized, there was a targeted end user that was supposed to benefit from this. Are they living in those houses? Did they benefit and own those houses? For that small project that was done. That is when now you move to the next project. The type, when you're covering this slum upgrading, okay, or public participation thing in Kibra, the question is, can we have people who've benefited from the little that has been done there? Yes. So then from that, we can see how to move forward. But if the thing is, yes?
Okay. Unfortunately, we only have 1 minute. Let me give it to Daktari as well, so that we are not cut off. Daktari, your final remarks, please.
No, I think the Housing Development Fund is already now in place. I can see government's already establishing laws that will going to oversee the implementation of this. And therefore, we should just embrace it and move on. And of course, we place competition between the private and the public. And the consumers are the ones to decide which of the competitors will going to benefit them. And I tend to think if the government aspect of low housing costs will be in place, then all of us will go and get those low housing facilities. And therefore, I think it is time to realize that the procedures that AG and the rest of the people are putting in place is what was lacking in the initial discussion that has created all those discussions. And as my scholar around here said, let's involve the people who are end users so that they are not carved out of the project once the project is realized.
Okay, thank you. That marks the end of our time. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. The furthest end, that is Dr. Isaack Hassan, a governance and a political expert as well. Next to him, it is Oscar Omondi, a political analyst, and finally, Sammy Melly, a political analyst as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for us this morning. Don't forget, the conversation continues as well online. Talk to us through our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1, at Abdiaziz, Hashim. You'll have more in our subsequent bulletins in terms of what is happening in and around the country in terms of the affordable housing bill, as well as more the latest in terms of the Embakasi gas explosion. We do understand that the Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka will be visiting the scene, and also our reporters have been tasked to talk to the PS social protection, which you just witnessed a while ago, in terms of the NSSF new rates and how they'll be able to be paid and collected, given that they need to come into effect in the coming months, as well as the social health insurance fund. That marks the end of our time here on News Check on this, the 7th of February 2024. My name is Abdiaziz. My co-anchor is Lensa Odinga. Don't go too far. Kasichana Masha is up next with Kurunzi Mashinani. Good morning for now.